Welcome to the market recap presented by Tackle Trading. Get in the game.
Good afternoon, Tackle Traders, and hello, YouTube. This is Frank coming to you with the market wrap-up for Tuesday, July 31st. A little bit of buying came back into the market today, particularly in a couple of areas. So let's go ahead and get started. Of course, the big news of today was Apple's after close earnings. Took a quick peek before I jumped on here. It looks like they did beat expectations. We're up a little bit over 2%. In after-hours trading just shortly after the earnings announcement. So looking good going into tomorrow. We'll see if there's any carryover in the tech sector, in the FANG stocks, or in the market in general, but that does look like Apple made people happy, which is always a good thing. So kind of talk a little bit about some interesting earnings from the last, 24 hours. Illumina reported after the close yesterday to a pretty strong little report, up pretty good today, as was Tencor Corporation, semiconductor company, and the S&P 500. Pretty nice report as well. Of course, this morning, before the market opened, we had Pfizer, who was one I was keeping an eye on, and we've talked a lot about the healthcare sector and its relative strength this last week and a half or so. Came in and definitely had a nice little pop off of their earnings as well. So pretty nice little earnings day. Saw a lot more, you can kind of see here, on our percentage winners, a lot more good than bad, unless you are IP at GX. They missed. That's a pretty darn big gap to the downside. I don't follow these guys, but that's definitely a miss. But other than that, pretty strong day overall when it comes to the earnings. Of course, we have Apple. That's the big one. In a lot of ways, I kind of think it's kind of the only one that matters on a night like tonight. But we still have quite a few other companies: Fiserv, Andarco, Boston Properties, Charles H. Robinson. So still some pretty nice sized companies, if you don't compare them to Apple, coming out here in the after hours. And then, of course, tomorrow before the market open, fairly mellow with a few various different types of companies, utilities, tech, even Molson Coors, even a consumer good company. So expect Apple to kind of be the on everybody's mind, I would imagine. So keep an eye on that. We also do have the Fed meeting coming out tomorrow, so make sure that you are paying attention to that as well on the news front. Shifting gears to kind of see where we are in our market. Definitely an interesting day. Here we are looking at the NASDAQ. We've been kind of eyeballing this trend line, lining up there with the 50-day moving average over the last little while, and we kind of started to see maybe a turnaround candle here today, maybe a little bit of a pivot. Haven't got any confirmation just yet, of course, but this is the first step, right? Need some sellers to get out at that support level, needs some buyers to start stepping back in. So definitely an interesting place, especially if tech rebounds following Apple's good earnings report. So definitely something I'll be keeping an eye on there. Continue to hold our breakout. We did have more, a little more buying come into the market today. S&P continues to hold its breakout. Not a lot has changed from a technical point of view. And we'll talk a little bit more about why that's always so important to keep in mind when we get to the real estate sector today. Same with the Dow Jones, kind of continuing to hover around that old breakout point. So nothing too crazy from a charting point of view. Russell did have a little bit of a bounce back, but did still close below that old support, new resistance, kind of struggling with the 50 right below that. So no surprise that that's kind of what's causing the problems. If you're a bull, at least it's hard to get back. It's hard to break resistance, hard to break support. That's why it's important, right? So we'll kind of keep an eye as we go forward, but definitely technically not a lot has changed there either. But you have to certainly look at that as a pretty strong buying sentiment coming back in, especially when you consider not unlike the NASDAQ or the SPY or the Dow, that kind of had technical, reasons, trend lines, breakout points. this not really a great reason to buy, and there was a lot of follow through for the buyers here today. So if you are a bull in the rut, probably aren't unhappy to see that. We do keep an eye on that old support to act as new resistance. Can certainly cause some problems, especially short term when it comes to technical analysis. Our material sector, pretty strong day to day, was able to climb back and close back above the 200-day moving average, right about that downward sloping trend line that they've been working with. I personally call these type of patterns pinches. That's just what I always call them. I know that's not the textbook definition, but I'm continuing to monitor as it continues to trade within that descending trend line as well as the ascending trend line. Sooner or later, something's going to have to give, and I'd like to be there to decide maybe there's something I could be interested if and when that happens. No surprise, energy struggled at resistance. We dojied at resistance yesterday. This is the top of the range they've been in for quite some time. So definitely not a terrible shock. I don't think that we struggled, did sell off a little bit at that resistance level. I've not confirmed any downward movement just yet, but that could happen as early as tomorrow. And of course, if something like that happens at resistance, probably shouldn't be all that shocked. So kind of monitor that, how it responds to that resistance level for any trades that you have or looking to make. Financials, after putting up a pretty good fight at resistance for a few days, they kind of slowed down, gave up. Some people started jumping out today. And that happens a lot, where I'm willing to give it the benefit of doubt at resistance for one day, but the second day it gets a little harder to have faith, and so on and so forth. So, but hasn't really done anything too crazy, kind of working back. It's a pretty steep little trend line that it's working with, but it did kind of pull back and kind of stop there today. So we did kind of see that. That's kind of where the bleeding stopped in the financial sector. So those two areas are going to continue to be important. Right below that, we do have our 200-day moving average. We have our previous swing support. So there is some levels of support below us right now. But currently, we find ourselves kind of just hanging out on that trend line, kind of squeezed between that trend line and that resistance level right now. Technology, very similar. It doesn't look quite as pretty as the NASDAQ. It's kind of dojied a little bit below its 50-day moving average, but the same general principle applies with the technology ETF as kind of worked back into that trend line, just like the overall NASDAQ did. So let's see if tech's definitely had a rough few days leading into today. So a doji is probably a welcome sight for those holding tech who aren't maybe just watching for a pullback. So we definitely having some pullback opportunities in that tech sector, which is pretty cool if you weren't sitting through them. We're looking for some new opportunities. Staples was able to push through and close above the 200-day moving average, kind of continuing its one of the most boring yet effective multi-month runs I've seen in a while. So I kind of was able to close on the right side of that 200-day moving average. Utilities continues to find itself in that same trading range, real back and forthy. It'll be interesting to see if and when we test this resistance level. That could be a potential place, obviously, to knock it down, with a potential breakout if we're able to break through that resistance level. Still not feeling great about the utility sector, but now it's starting to kind of simmer down. I'm starting to go, okay, well, an idea where support and resistance are. Now I can back accordingly. So whereas a couple weeks ago, man, I had no idea. I just don't have a great feel for it. A lot of great follow through in the healthcare sector. Of course, this has been my favorite sector for a while, as we've discussed. A lot of great follow through. Still not a lot of overhead. Some pretty good earnings in Illumina and Pfizer today. Probably helped out a little bit, but certainly some nice upward movement there in the healthcare sector as it continues its overall strength. Real estate rewarding all of those patient investors that stuck to their trade. We've been following together for a few weeks now, and for much of that time, the real estate had pulled back to that breakout point, bounced, pulled back, bounced, pulled back. It was a yo-yo. It was a fight back and forth, but the pattern never broke. And that's one thing to remember. And it's easier said than done sometimes. On a day like this, it's hard to feel great. Even though he had a couple of days before back here off of that nice bounce. But very importantly, we never broke support. We talked about that support being important. We talked about being potentially aware of what we might want to do if it were to happen, and only if it were to happen. But finally, that follow through finally came. Very strong day on the real estate side of things, rewarding the traders and investors that stayed true to their trade. So sometimes they take off, and we always love when they take right off. Right, that's a lot more fun than have to dance back and forth for a couple of weeks. But as long as our pattern is still in play, as long as the reasons that we're in the trade to begin with are still there, it's hard to complain too much, right? We're getting closer to resistance. We're not there yet, but we are, of course, a lot closer today than we were yesterday. On the intraday, heck, we tested that bottom. We tested that support level on the bottom just yesterday. So still pretty good strength overall within that sector. Keep an eye as it approaches that resistance. Obviously, something that we'll want to keep an eye out on. Energy and both crude and natural gas did see some selling today. We saw crude drop. We saw natural gas drop today. Overall, they've been pretty strong and haven't really changed too much technically. But we definitely saw some downward, some sellers come back into it. We continue to find ourselves in the same trading range on our dollar. Sometimes we're a little closer to the top. Some days we're a little closer to the bottom, but pretty much every day these days we're still in that range. So until we come out of that one way or another, I think most traders will say, I don't know. Some people say we're going up. Some people say we're going down. Until we come out of that trading range, at least technically speaking, I don't think we have a great leg to stand on whatever side of the fence that we find ourselves on. Gold and silver continue to kind of hang around those floors that they've been trying to build on over the past week and a half. The floor's holding on a positive note, but not seeing a ton of upward movement, understandably so. But we have, seen a little bit of floor building going on, so we'll have to see how that goes. Again, they've got to do more than that, at least as of now, to entice people to come back into them. That is for sure. So obviously, take a closer look at how the market responds to Apple here tomorrow. See if that can take our tech sector up. We'll see if anyone can do it. It's certainly an Apple. They have that capability. Keep an eye on the Fed meeting tomorrow afternoon as that comes through. Prepare for that. We still have earnings ahead of us. We're starting to get through. We're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Apple kind of in some ways kind of feels like that's about the end. To me, even though I know there's still companies yet for after Apple. But do stay on top of them as you get moving into the middle part of your trading week. As always, ladies and gentlemen, it has been my pleasure. I certainly appreciate everybody's time. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can catch any new YouTube videos we're doing over here at Tackle Trading. We always have more right around the corner. If you enjoyed the market wrap-up, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. That is always appreciated. With that, happy trading, everyone, and I will see you in the next one.